Yeah, some intrigue here at the last minute, Scott. I mean, clearly we have this leak now of the Bloomberg interview yesterday with the President of the United States, in which the President, according to the Toronto Star, said that he's not giving the Canadians any concessions at all in this negotiation. But he doesn't want to say that publicly because he doesn't want to back the Canadians effectively into a corner in terms of the negotiations. He doesn't want to kill them, he says, on the tape that has apparently been released now to the Toronto Star. Unclear exactly who leaked that tape or why or to what end, but you would imagine that that gives the Canadian side now a little bit of leverage here as they go into this afternoon of negotiations here in Washington. They would now have the ammunition to go to the table and say, hey, even the President admits we're not getting any concessions. You guys have to give us something. You have to give us something to go home to Ottawa with, or else we're not going to agree to a deal. So that is reshaping the dynamics here of the negotiation a little bit. You'd have to imagine that the incentives are all still in place for a deal today, but behind closed doors, how is this impacting everybody? How is this affecting the personalities there? There's a lot of politics domestically in Canada in terms of dealing with the Trump administration. So all of that in play. And then on top of that, we've got this sort of intrigue here of how comments that the president made off the record to Bloomberg ended up in a Canadian newspaper. That is mystifying a lot of people on this complex. And I can tell you there are a lot of theories flying around the White House right now as to how that happened. Unclear exactly how it did happen. Nobody involved appears to be talking about it publicly, but a lot of speculation and a lot of intrigue here as to how those private comments of the president have now splashed out onto the world stage.
Eamon, I want you to stay with me as I bring in Kevin O'Leary again. Kevin, no secret you have a lot of connections on the political fronts in Canada. What do you make of these most recent developments and how you think all of this is going to play out in the end?
Right now, they're going crazy in Ottawa. Let me lay it down on the numbers, okay? Here's what's going on in that room, and it's not pretty. There's an election starting next week in Canada. It's about 14 months away, and it hinges on the province of Quebec, where there are 78 seats out of the 338 seats. You got to think about Quebec as the Florida of Canada. You want to get a majority mandate, as the current administration has, you got to win Quebec. Now, what has Quebec got? It's got dairy. Pretty well every one of those 78 seats is dependent on supply-side management, dairy subsidies, and a 270% tariff. Here's where the intrigue starts. You remember the votes in Wisconsin. 78,000 farmers go to Trump and say, listen, we helped you become the president, and that's a fact. We want to sell milk powder to Eastern Ontario and Quebec. Milk powder is a big enemy of supply-side management. That's what they don't want in those provinces. The chance that Trudeau is going to agree to sell milk powder into Quebec right in front of election is a zero. And so he's already come out yesterday and said that. Right now in this room, and I'm speculating on this one, they're having a hell of a problem on one little thing, milk powder. Now, when you think of the context of milk powder and what that's worth to the Canadian economy versus auto manufacturing, car parts, and automotive, it's nothing. But it's all about the politics. You've got one president with 78,000 farmers that he wants to please, and you got one prime minister with only 13,000 farmers in Ontario that he can't lose. He can't lose those guys. So right now, why I care about this, I'm looking at it through the lens of an investor. I've already lost 0.75% today on the Canadian currency. If they don't get a deal, it's going to be bad for the both U.S. and domestic Canadian market, where I have holdings in both. If you ask me right now at this hour if this deal is getting cut today, the answer is no. It's not going to happen.